Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now, in today's episode, we actually get into the construction of this very unusual curved warehouse. So where we left off in the last video, which was part 2A, we're looking at the transitional area where the goods entry siding begins from the main lines and up into that raised section that we've been working on. Now in that video, and there's a link in the corner for that, I touched on a curved warehouse building which is going to go in a very sort of awkward position where it straddles across the two different levels. So this particular curved warehouse building is based on a real building that used to exist in Oldham near the Clegg Street station. So it is now since long gone. As I mentioned in the previous video, I think it may have been demolished in about 2012. So this particular video is a little bit unusual in the fact that there's some footage that was taken during the Model Railway convention where I was holding a workshop that focused on this particular building, and of course I had a live audience, so I actually didn't get terribly far with the construction because there was a lot of discussion and conversation going on at the same time. So if we just quickly wind back the clock to some of the methods that I was using to assemble this building, which included the design work that I put together on the computer, and then of course doing some of the laser cut card work as well. So it's a very similar method to some of the other scratch built buildings on the Station Road layout, and of course in particular the St Michael's station, and there's a wee link in the top corner for that. So in preparation for the workshop that I held at the convention, of course I pre-laser cut all the components, and I also printed out all the necessary brickwork and also prepared the windows and also other little bits and pieces like the window frames, and partly assembled the roof structure as well. So there's basically two sections to this video. There was the initial assembly of the base structure of the building, so essentially kind of the skeleton shape of the building, and then in the second part it was actually applying some of the brick paper texture, installing some windows, and then assembling the outer walls to the base structure. So we'll leap through to the first section of the build, and of course some of this footage was taken at the convention, so I am wearing my lanyard and red committee vest. So that's the first section, and as far as I got actually within the workshop, it was really actually building up the main structure of the building. I did get into a little bit of the printed brick application as well, but now we move into the second section where I really sort of concentrate and go into a little bit more detail in regards to the brick application, window installation, and then some final assembly. And this all actually focuses on the sort of right hand end or the right hand wing of the building, which is just the 2-story section. Now pretty much the same techniques also applied to the 3-story section as well. So we'll head over to that now and I'll come back to you afterwards. So that's as much as I covered in the actual assembly and construction footage, and of course a lot of those techniques applied to the larger section of the curved warehouse. So with that all complete and assembled, we'll flick over now to where the warehouse is at the moment and just run through a few more bits and pieces. So we've now reached a point, I guess, where the bulk of the structure has now been assembled, and as we sort of looked back at those sped up clips just before, the curved structure was one of the last components, or these curved walls were the last components to install, and the same process was used for this one here. So we had the base structure or skeleton of the building assembled, so when it came time to apply these curved walls, of course that gave us something to anchor and bend the actual shape of the wall to. So one of the other things you may have noticed in the sped up footage was these windowsills. Now I decided to go down this route where these windowsills are 3mm square balsa wood that was pre-painted in some various sort of grey tones in order to try and sort of mimic maybe some concrete. And interestingly, I actually found a tin of spray paint that supposedly is a concrete effect, and to a degree it kind of worked. But the other method would have been to apply a 1mm strip of card to the outer edge and then wrap that in a concrete texture paper, which you would then have to really kind of wrap over the top of the windowsill as well. So by using this sort of method, and of course in the actual planning and laser cutting of these walls, this notch was cut out and these slotted in. So of course we've got our 2mm card wall, and then we have this 3mm square balsa wood, and so you end up with a 1mm proud windowsill, which I think finishes it off and gives it a good effect. So these floor components here, which I'm trying to sort of mimic the original building a little bit here, they appeared to be really made of wood, and so I've used quite thick sort of chunky balsa wood here and weathered them down and toned them down a little bit beforehand and inserted these in here. So we've also added just a tiny little bit of interior detail to the floors in here where we've got a open entranceway. So I've printed out some floorboard texture and glued that in place, and also down in this entranceway here. So going back to the sped up footage, of course we wrapped these corners, and as was described in the video, I ran a colour pencil down the edge of the paper, so that sort of removes any white edge, and then they're wrapped around, and they're reasonably well concealed. So the potential is I can run a drain pipe down there which could hide it even further, but we'll see how it goes. Whereas for example here, it may be showing up on the camera, but there's a white seam running down there where I didn't quite get the alignment here for a join in the brickwork. Now the only reason that join is there is because I'm using an A4 colour printer, and of course I couldn't print this entire section in one piece, but once again this is going to be hidden by a drain pipe running up here. So being a disused warehouse, which is basically what I'm going to base it on, and maybe it's only just really been decommissioned as a warehouse, I've decided I'm not going to put any lighting in this building. And I know that sounds possibly a little bit crazy not to put lights in there, but I do want it to sort of have that sense that it's no longer in use, and therefore you wouldn't have seen any lights on at night time. So with the building at this stage, there's still further details to do, which we'll cover in the next episode in the series, and that includes the plinths that run across the top of the building. Of course we've got ridging to still do on the roof, and I haven't actually attached the rear wall behind here yet either. And then of course once that's all done, then the whole thing will be gone over with further weathering to give it a deteriorated feel to it. So there we have it for the curved warehouse at this point. So I think in the next episode in this series I'll actually finish off the warehouse. Of course there is the back wall to the warehouse I haven't assembled and installed, and then of course we'll get into some of the finer details and also a bit of weathering. So by the end of the next episode we should have a mostly complete warehouse. So I certainly hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you've gained some inspiration, potential ideas for your own layouts. And hopefully some of the techniques too as well that I've used in the construction of this curved warehouse. So I'll leave it there for this video. Do leave your comments and feedback. It's always greatly appreciated, and I thoroughly enjoy reading everything that comes in. I will apologise, of course, that I haven't actually responded to any comments from the previous video, but with the convention and other things going on just recently, I just haven't had the time. But hopefully in the coming weeks I'll be able to sit down and actually respond to some of the comments. So I'll sign off for now. Do take care, everyone. Look after yourselves. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.